All right. Welcome to Pro Football. First 50 years where we take the past, then we bring it back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920, 1970. Especially if you're going to go back in time and maybe check out a game from the 1920s or the 30s. I mean, of course, you can go online, find a box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was, where the game was played at, what the attendance was. You might find starting lineups for each team. Exactly what happened during the game. Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little newsflash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos here or nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. If that's all right with you, let's get it on. And today's game, final game of the 1959 season, a battle for second place. Because the Giants had wrapped up the Eastern Division already. You had the Cleveland Browns and the Philadelphia Eagles at Franklin Field, December 13th, 1959. Well, spoiler alert. Both these teams would finish 7-5. The Browns coming into this game were 6-5. So if they both finish 7-5, dun, 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 spoiler alert, I apologize. The Browns would win this game. But both teams would wind up 7-5. The Eagles coming into this game were 7-4. I mean, if they were to win this game and finish 8-4, I mean, regardless that they lost this game, this was a fantastic season for the Philadelphia Eagles. 1958, they won 2 games. It's a 12-game season. So they went from 2 wins to 7 wins in 1 year. They had a +5 in 1 year. Fantastic season for the Philadelphia Eagles, even as I said, once again, even though they lost this game. And, of course, in 1960, they would take it even to the next level. They would win 10 games, go 10-2, take it to the championship game, and it would beat the Green Bay Packers 17-13 at Franklin Field and give Vince Lombardi his only postseason loss in his coaching career. So regardless, I mean, this was a fantastic season for the Eagles. For the Browns, it was a little bit of a disappointment. They came within, like 1 game in 1958 of winning the division. They would lose a game to the Giants. They would wind up tied at the end of the 58 season. They would have a playoff game. They would lose that one and get knocked out of the playoff race. But they were like right there with the Giants. Here, I mean, they wound up 3 games out of first place. I mean, disappointing season for the Cleveland Browns. So they both finished 7-5, but for the Eagles, they got nothing to be ashamed of. Fantastic season for the Browns. It had a winning season, but when you're Paul Brown, you expect maybe a little bit more than just a 7-5 season. So, but let's pop up. Both teams really didn't have great preseasons here. Share the screen, pop the Eagles up here. 1959 Philadelphia Eagles. All right, here we go. I think if I remember, the Eagles are 2-4 in the preseason. I think the Browns were 2-4 as well in the preseason. Once again, it's there we are. It goes both ways with the preseason, right? If you're playing a game, you like to win it, right? But if you don't win the games, it's just preseason. So, right. Eagles beat the Giants in the opening game at Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And then they would beat the Baltimore Colts. But the Colts were without the services of Raymond Berry, Lenny Moore, and John Unitas for this particular game, which certainly hampered the Baltimore Colts scoring offense. And then, of course, but then the Eagles they lost to the Rams, they lost to the Lions, the Packers, and the Bears. But they played a lot of these games with neutral site. They said this one's a home game, but they didn't play it. They played it in Pennsylvania, but they wouldn't play it at Franklin Field. It was at Hershey Park, Hershey, Pennsylvania. But this is a neutral site game. That's a neutral site game, so. But as I said, you'll see here that the Eagles were very, very consistent during the season. During the regular season, they would lose one, then they would win two. Then they would lose one, win two, lose, almost the whole season long. They would open up against the 49ers and they would lose. Then they would win two. Then they would lose one. Then they would win two. Then they would lose one. Then they would win two. Then they would lose one. Then they almost won these final. So very consistent. The Eagles were not a very good road team. They were a very good home team. But this would be one. Obviously here they would wind up losing this one. But as I said, all in all, for the Philadelphia Eagles, 1959 was a fantastic season. If we go over to the Browns, it's the same thing. They did not have a super spectacular preseason. They were 2-4. Yeah, 2-4 as well. They lost to the Steelers, lost to the Lions, lost to the 49ers. They beat the Rams. They lost to the Lions. And then they beat the Bears. So it's just 2-4. But with the Browns, they had right up here with 4 games left after they beat the Redskins 31-17. They were 6-2. So were the Giants. They were both 6-2. And with 4 games left, especially as good as the Browns have been, right, with the All-American Football Conference and throughout the 50s, it's going to look like it was going to be a heck of a finish here, but it didn't work out that way. They would lose 3 of their final 4 games, and I guess fortunately, they wound up with a winning record instead of falling to 6-6. But they lost a 1-point game here to the Steelers. They lost a 1-point game here to the 49ers. The Giants blow them out at Yankee Stadium. And then here, the final game of the season, they would beat the Eagles 28-21. They would beat the Eagles 2 times. They beat them 28-7 in Cleveland. Then they beat them 28-21. Right? But it's the same thing with the Eagles. The Eagles kind of fell apart toward the end there. The Eagles had a chance. Now here, after they beat the Rams 23-20 in Philadelphia, it was like almost a last-second field goal to pull this one out, 23-20. The Eagles had 3 losses. Eagles were 6-3. Giants were 7-2. So the Eagles were only 1 game out of first place, with 3 games left to go. So, to go from 2 wins in 58 to with 3 games left in the 59 season, only being 1 game out of first place. Wow, right? So what they kind of needed to do was really, at least, from their perspective, I guess, they had to win at least 2 out of 3, and if possible, win all 3 of their final games. And that didn't happen. They lost 2. They got blew out by the Steelers in the snow in Pittsburgh. They beat the Redskins, and they would lose this one right here. So, but both these teams, with about 3-4 weeks left to go in the season, both they were right there with the Giants. Except what happened with the Giants? The Giants, their final few games, 4 or 5 games, they would just win them. They didn't stumble at all. But the Browns and the Eagles both stumbled toward the end there. So it is what it is. But except for the Eagles, as I said, once again, nothing to be ashamed about. They had a absolutely fantastic season in 1959. Now, this game was played at good old Franklin Field. I only remember watching 1 game from Franklin Field. First year I remember watching football. It was 1970. And, of course, the only game that I remember watching, because I was in New York at the time, living in New York, and the Eagles were not very good. So they did not get a lot of airtime. They were on in New York. They went when they were playing the Giants, but the only Eagle home game, quite possibly in the 1970 season, that was aired on TV in New York was the Monday Night Football game that the Giants and Eagles played each other in Franklin Field. So that's the only game I remember watching Franklin Field. 1969 in 69, it was grass. They went to artificial turf. So for 69 and 70, Franklin Field was artificial turf. And, of course, in 1971, the Eagles moved into the Veterans Stadium, where that was artificial turf as well, too. But let's see. Let's go to good old Wikipedia and see what What do they have to say about Franklin? That is old stadium, old, and still around today. There we go. All right. Franklin Field. Sports Stadium in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at the eastern edge of the University of Penn's campus, named after Penn's founder, Benjamin Franklin. It is the home stadium for the Penn Relays, very famous track and field event, very famous. And the university's venue for football, track and field, and lacrosse. Franklin is also used by Penn students for recreation, intramural, and club sports, including touch football and cricket. It is also the site of Penn's commencement exercises, weather permitting, of course. Franklin Field is the oldest still operating college football site in the nation. Franklin Field was the first college stadium in the United States with a scoreboard, and the second with an upper deck of seats. In 1922, it was the site of the first radio broadcast of a football game on WIP, because I live 20 minutes from Philadelphia, and WIP is still around today, as well as the first television broadcast of a football game by Philco. From 1958, as we speak, right? 1958 to 1970, Franklin Field was the home of the Philadelphia Eagles of the National Football League. It hosted the championship game in 1960 as the Eagles defeated the Green Bay Packers 17-13. Until around 1860, the grounds of what became Franklin Field served as a potter's field. The crania of some of these individuals were acquired by Samuel Morton and are now housed in the Penn Museum. Franklin Field, the smaller version, I guess we're going to say, was built for about $100,000 and dedicated on April 20th, 1895 for the first running of the Penn Relays. Then we got into the 20th century. Permanent Franklin Field construction did not begin until after the turn of the century, though. Let's see. The reconstructed and expanded Franklin Field was opened on September 26, 1903, prior to Penn's football first game of the season when they hosted Dickinson. We got the reconstructed stadium held about 25,000 people and was opened as the gymnasium was being constructed at the western end. Let's see. The Philadelphia Inquirer reported that cost totaled $525,000. 1960, university officials led by George Nietzsche, planned with the city to build a new 100,000-seat half-sunken stadium for $750,000. Plans call for a new train station called Union Station, would feature a Pennsylvania Railroad stop and a stop on the proposed and never built elevated subway line connected the Market Frankford line. But let's say the plan, had plans for it, but the plans quickly collapsed. 5 years later, it was decided instead to expand Franklin Field. Let's see. So the current stadium structure was built in the 1920s. After the original wooden bleachers were torn down, the lower tier was erected in 1922, as you see, like right over here, right? Workmen laying bricks on the south wall of Franklin Field, circa 1922. The old wood stands were raised immediately following the Penn Relays, and the new concrete lower tier and seating for 50,000 were built. The second tier was added in 1925, again designed by Day and Clauder, when it became the second and largest two-tiered stadium in the United States. And here we got it. It was designed in of steel and concrete in the shape of a letter U. See right down here, there's just like buildings at the one end zone. Right? There's a big U. It actually really looks nice. Really, absolutely beautiful stadium. See, the first football radio broadcast originated from Frankfurt in 1922, carried by WIP. 1936 Democratic National Convention was concluded at Franklin Field. Let's see. In the 30s and 40s, Penn led the nation in attendance A 65,000-seat stadium was expanded each fall with temporary stands to seat 78,000 people. Wow. The annual Thanksgiving Cornell Penn game was there. Franklin Field switched from natural grass to AstroTurf in 1969, became the first NFL stadium with artificial turf. The Oilers of the AFL had moved into the Astrodome with AstroTurf the previous season, but they were in the AFL. So this is the NFL. Let's see here. 21st century. Here we go. After 125 years, the original 1895 concrete stands were deteriorating badly. An extensive $44 million renovation to reinforce the concrete began in 2015. Project was staggered over multiple phases, which allowed the continued use of the stadium during renovation work. And just really, really nice, beautiful, beautiful stadium. Down here, you still got the buildings down here and all that. But I mean, it did a fantastic, really, really looks nice. It's nice when they have an old stadium and they're able to keep it around, Now you look right here. I mean, the Penn Quakers host Harvard at Franklin Field. This is a picture from an undated book, from an undated 1905 book. Let's see. Here we go. And it's really, really, really pretty. I got these buildings down here, the scoreboard here. I'm going to show you some pictures. Right? Really, really, really nice. They did a fantastic job with it. The Eagles played at Franklin Field from 58 to 70. They moved to the stadium for the 58 season after leaving Connie Mack Stadium. Franklin Field would seat over 60,000 for the Eagles, whereas Connie Mack had a capacity of only 39,000. Let's see. According to the then Eagles president, the Eagles did not pay rent for use of Franklin Field because Penn was a not-for-profit organization. Instead, the Eagles donated between $75,000 and $100,000 per year to pay for maintenance and other expenses. The university collected all the concessions and parking revenue. And of course, sadly, the Bert Bell game, October 11, 1959, Commissioner Bert Bell died at the nearby University Hospital after suffering a heart attack at Franklin Field during the last 2 minutes of the game played between the Eagles and the Steelers. Sad. He was a very popular NFL commissioner. As I said right here, we got the Eagles hosted the 1960 NFL Championship game. Of course, two infamous, I guess, incidents happened in Eagles history. Santa Claus got booed, and Howard Cosell in 1970, the Monday Night Football game between the Eagles and the Giants, was taken ill. He sounded drunk to me. I mean, you listen to him, he sounded drunk talking. This was so it was during the Eagles-Giants Monday Night Football game on November 23rd, 1970. After throwing it up on color commentator Don Meredith's cowboy boots shortly before halftime, Cosell left the stadium and took a taxi back to New York City. Meredith and play-by-play announcer Keith Jackson made little mention of his departure during the second half. Later, denying being drunk, Cosell said that he had been dizzy from running laps around Franklin Field's track before the game with track star Tommy Smith. Nah, he was drunk. Cosell was 52 years old at the time. I mean, look at it. The Army-Navy game was there. I mean, just places just packed people. So, other professional football games were there. We got the Yellow Jackets and the Dayton Triangles played there in 1927. The Philadelphia Bell of the World Football League played their 1975 home games there. And one of the reasons why the league folded was the Bell drew fewer than 12,000 fans total to 5 home games before the WFL folded it. So they didn't draw 12,000 fans for 5 games total. So another one of the reasons why. Yeah, and of course then you got the United States Football League, USFL. Philadelphia Stars had to move their 1984 playoff games out of the vet, and they played at Franklin Field. Cool. And pen relays. Very, 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 very famous track and field event. All right, so we got some pictures here. Hearing my dog often making noises. All right, so let's see. We got some pictures here. All right. Eagles at Franklin Field. There we go. Really. Let's see. Where are we at here? Oh, here we go. Look, I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, look at it. Look at those uniforms, man, huh? What it doesn't say. Oh, it's a six. Oh. There we go. Is it during the championship game? Yeah. No, it's gonna be this. Not the champion. Old days of Philadelphia Eagles bench watches the action during the '60 championship game at Franklin Field. There was snow on the sidelines and stuff like that. Really? Oh, there's my buddy. I'm not so sure about that. I'm having a hard time believing that. But here we go. There's. I guess it's 19. What is this? No, let's see. But this is after this is 61 or 62 or whatever it is, because this is Sonny Jurgensen talking to Tommy McDonald. If it was 1960 or so, and prior, this would be Norm Van Brocklin walking off the field with Tommy McDonald. So, but look at it, beautiful uniform, just plain. I mean, to me, I'm an old time fart, so please forgive me, but it's real nice, beautiful uniforms. Here we go. Here's a nice shot right here too. There's two of them here. Okay, this one's a little bit. Okay, this one here. This one's the one that's closer up. Paul Hornung kicking one of his field goals in the 1960 championship game. Here's the buildings in the background. You see, I mean, held a decent amount of people, but it was just in the shape of the U. And you see, we got these buildings back here. I guess it's part of Penn campus. And so I mean, there's a lot of people that they extra people they could have had in the stadium, but is what it is. Here's another shot. Oh, here's the Atlanta Falcons coming out in 1970, getting ready to play the Eagles at Franklin Field. See the track going around the stadium, and then the field is artificial turf. And there's the Falcons coming in there. What we got here? Here's a shot from. See, you got the. Right down there, you got the buildings. So it's just a big horseshoe. What we got here? Anything else here? Let's see. Oh, you see it's from the outside. There we go. From a 1922 photo. Look at that. I guess. I don't know. 1927. This was after they tore down the other one and they rebuilt it. Really nice. This is what is this here? 1968 program. Eagles and the Giants. So this is at Franklin Field. September. Can't remember where that is, but I'm not sure. Well, I guess this is probably maybe the opening game of the season. And there's Fran Tarkenton, who the Giants got in 1967. So I'm not sure. Oh, nope, that's not Franklin Field right there. Here we go. There's another shot right here. Old Franklin Field. Beautiful shot. And it's after the game is over right here. Well, I always wonder. This is after Chuck Bednarik got done tackling Jim Taylor. The thing is that the Packers were down 17-13. It was like, 20 seconds to go. I'm not sure if the time was running or whatever. But they didn't have any timeouts left. And they had to score a touchdown. So Bart Starr drops back the pass. And once again, it is what it is, right? But drops back the pass, and he dumps it over the middle to Jim Taylor, who's maybe 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. He's got to bowl his way like 15 yards into the end zone. Chuck Bednarik is in his way. There's a bunch of other Eagles in his way. So he has to try to knock down like 4 or 5 Eagles just to try to get into the end zone. And once Chuck Bednarik gets his hands on you, ain't going nowhere. And of course, then Chuck Bednarik and a couple other guys tackle Jim Taylor. They sit on Taylor for a second or two. Bednarik looks at the clock and he's like, "You can get up, Jim. This bleeping game is over." And so the time ran out. It was like, you know what what kind of scrutiny the quarterback we get under nowadays? It's like, you have no timeouts left. You need a touchdown. You just dump it over the line of scrimmage and to a fullback, and where he's going to get tackled, and the game's going to run out. And you guys are going to lose. Why don't you throw it into the end zone? Why don't you throw it to the sidelines where a guy can catch it, or throw it, maybe it's incomplete, the clock stops the clock, but throw it into the end zone. Why just dump it over the line of scrimmage to your fullback? But once again, it is what it is. But here's a kind of a card, I guess. There's we got colorized here. Either that or very, very, very pretty stadium. Very pretty stadium. And once again, 2 thumbs up to Philadelphia and all that for Penn and all that for keeping it around. I mean, it's old stadium. Looks absolutely fantastic. It's just some stadiums they're able to keep around, and it's viable to maybe spend some money and keep it alive, as they say. Others, they just start falling apart, and just no sense in keeping them. So, but it's still around today. The Eagles, of course, don't play in there. The stadium they play in now is that beautiful. It's on grass, outdoors, beautiful stadium. I'm a Giant fan, but one thing I have to, if I had a cap, I'm tipping it to the Eagles without question. Giant Stadium, 2 thumbs down. It's outdoors, but it's on artificial turf. Now they say because the artificial turf, Mr. Mara says is that because the Giants and the Jets, basically like every week there's a game being played there. So the grass gets chewed up in the Northeast. It's tough to grow grass, and keep it, maintain it like November and December. And now we're playing freaking into January. So to maintain the grass and all that, when like every week there's a game being played, is kind of tough. So that's the big reason why the World Cup is being played there right now, and they put grass in there. But Mr. Mara said as long as there's 2 football teams playing in that stadium, they're probably going to always have artificial turf. But the Eagles Stadium, 2 thumbs up. Absolutely beautiful. Outside, it looks beautiful. I drive by it. You go past on 95 in Philly. You drive by, you see it. Beautiful looking stadium. It's outdoors. It's in the weather elements. There's no freaking dome, and it's on grass. 2 thumbs up, Eagles. Fantastic job. Absolutely fantastic. All right, so we got a little bit of pregame to talk about here. So let's go to the December 13th, 1959 edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer. What do they got to say? All right, Philadelphia Inquirer. All right, here we go. Eagles want second place. Chuck a win and now this is also kind of kicker too. This is supposed to be Chuck Bed. I mean, it's supposed to be Chuck Bednarik's final game. No. Not only does he come back to play in the 1960 season, not only did he come back and play in the 1961 season, but he comes back and plays in the 1962 season as well. So this is supposed to be his final game. He's supposed to be retiring after this game. Well, he comes back and plays 3 more years. So, all right. Chuck Bednarik, one of football's all-time greats, concludes his distinguished career. No, he doesn't. At Franklin Field Sunday afternoon, and his Eagle teammates are hoping to make it a day he'll long remember. Well, no, they didn't do that either because they lost. The Eagles can do just that by avenging one of their 4 defeats at the expense of the Cleveland Browns, an always formidable foe, all the more dangerous this trip because they're smarting from a 3-game losing streak. A victory in this final game would leave the Eagles in undisputed possession of second place and would assure the club its best record at 8-4 since 1949, the championship season of the year Bednarik broke in. A crowd in excess of 35,000 is expected to be on hand for the 1 p.m. kickoff, a half hour earlier than usual. That will send the Eagles in quest of their 6th straight home win. A rousing farewell is assured Bednarik, retiring at the age of 34. Because he spent time in World War II, so that cut into his career. As he's one of the most popular players ever to don the green and white. He'll receive a color TV set and a $1,000 check from his club in appreciation for his consistent high-grade play over the years. Now, I'm coming back. I'm going to come back in 1960. Well, it worked out well for him, right? Because they won the championship. Is he got to give the TV back and the $1,000? Or Bednarik won't consider it a satisfactory curtain drop unless the Eagles win, and it's a cinch the rugged center will be striving harder than any of his mates to accomplish this feat. In order to do this, the Eagles will have to stop both the great Jimmy Brown, the league's leading ground gainer for 3 years, and the fleet Bobby Mitchell, something they haven't been able to do until now. And there is Bobby Mitchell right there. Bobby Mitchell, breakaway runner, must be stopped Sunday if the Eagles hope to defeat the Browns in the finale for an undefeated homestand. They've slowed down Brown, but Mitchell has done them in with long runs. And when Mitchell, 180-pound Illinois whiz, has been held in, Brown, who has been averaging 4.6 per carry, was hurt for the first time in his career against the Giants in New York last week, but is reported back in top shape. Only Brown star who won't be starting is halfback Ray Renfro, who missed the Giants game with a pulled thigh muscle. He may be able to see spot action. Starting in his place will be Frank Clark, former Colorado star. Check the 228-pound Brown has run wild. Brown scored twice and Mitchell once as the Browns down the flock, 28-7 at Cleveland. The passing of Milt Plum, former Penn State quarterback from Woodbury, New Jersey, was a big factor in Cleveland's win at home. Plum will be striving for an even better performance here, as he'll have a personal cheering section of several hundred from his hometown. Now, Woodbury is about 10 miles from where I sit right here. Eagle ace Norm Van Brocklin had one of his poor days at Cleveland and has no intention of being overshadowed again. No one has to remind him that a sharp performance such as he had in the 34-14 rout of Washington last week is required if the Eagles are to have second-place money all to themselves. So, if the Browns win, which they do, both teams will be 7-5. But the Eagles are trying to get the win, or they just need a tie. Right? If the Eagles finish 7-4-1, they would finish ahead of the Browns, and they'd still be in second place. If the Browns win, it would enable them to tie the Eagles for second place and give them approximately $250 apiece as solace for a disappointing season. Lebanon High's 150-piece band will entertain before the game and between the halves. And here we go. Here's the now you'll notice they both scored about the same amount of points so far during the season, but you notice the Browns giving up a lot fewer. First downs, rushing yards. Now, they're both pretty much about even because the Browns have about 600 more rushing yards, but the Browns have about 600 less passing yards. So, let's see. And also the Browns have done a phenomenal job as far as they only lost 4 fumbles all year. 11 games, they only lost 4 fumbles. There's been teams who've lost 4 fumbles in a game. The Browns have only lost 4 all year long. All right, let's see what we got here. Let's go to. Now we'll go to the Plain Dealer, December 13th, 1959 edition of the Plain Dealer. That's a Cleveland paper or a Ohio paper. All right, what do they got to say here? Let me refresh this here. All right. For the second straight week, the Browns find themselves underdogs in the East. They arrived here yesterday to learn the Eagles are favored by 2 points to win the 1959 windup at Franklin Field this afternoon and keep second place in the National Football League's Eastern Division. For only the second time in their 14-year history, the Browns come down to the finale with no chance for a title. It happened in 1956 when they closed with a 5-7 record and fourth place in the division. That was the first year that Otto Graham he retired. Otto Graham was there from 46 to 55, and every year he took him to the title game. And as soon as he retired in 1956, that gave Paul Brown and the Browns their first ever losing season. All right, this time Paul Brown's club can finish in a tie for second or as low as fourth. A victory will mean a second spot deadlock with the Eagles, while a loss coupled with a Pittsburgh victory over the Cardinals will put them in fourth position. And the Steelers would beat the Cardinals. Made several changes after a poor 56 season. After the 56 campaign, Brown made a number of changes and came up with a division winner the next season. He admits that he doesn't know for sure whether the present club needs a major overhaul or merely some tinkering with the parts. Only a month back, the Browns, after a great victory in Baltimore, followed by triumphs. All right, let's go to the next page here of the Plain Dealer. So we got another December 13th, 1959 edition of the Plain Dealer. What do we got here? There we go. All right, so, okay, the article ended. Only a month back, the Browns, after a great victory in Baltimore, followed by triumphs. Here we go. Over the Eagles and Redskins were being heralded a team bordering on greatness. Then came the 21-20 losses to Pittsburgh and San Francisco, and then the debacle in New York last Sunday. And the Giants actually absolutely blew out of the stadium. Through the scheme of 5 victories and the 3 straight defeats, the Brown has gone with much of the same personnel. He will follow that policy again this afternoon. The team should be helped offensively by the return of Ray Renfro, who didn't play at all against the Giants. He had a pulled leg muscle, but that appears to be on the mend. Jim Brown assured, once again, a rushing crown. Brown also will stick with Multnomah at quarterback, Bobby Mitchell at left halfback, and, of course, Jim Brown at fullback. Big Jim with 1,177. And here we go. Here's the 1 p.m. kickoff. Here's the starting. Oh, we got the offenses here. There we go. And there's the players' numbers. And there's the rest of the team. Well, we got Big Jim with 1,177 yards gained, is assured of his 3rd straight rushing crown. And obviously, he was a rookie in 57. So 57, 58, 50. So basically every year he's been in the league, he's won the rushing title. That was the only year he won't win the rushing title will be in 1962 when Jim Taylor wins that. Cleveland's defense, riddled by the passing of Charlie Connolly, will be on the spot. Several members of the defensive backfield showed up poorly, and their futures with the Browns may be at stake today. Ooh, all right. And then we got one more here. We got the Lancaster Online, the LNP, Lancaster Online. So we have the December 13th, 1959 edition of the Lancaster Online. Interesting. What do they got to say? All right, here we go. Yep, let me refresh this here. Doesn't screw up on me. Eagles must win today to finish in 2nd place. All right. Philadelphia surprising Eagles will be shooting for their highest spot in the Pro Football Sun in 10 years this afternoon, when they meet Jimmy Brown and the Cleveland Browns at Franklin Field in the 1950 football finale. Kickoff time is 1 o'clock p.m. Half hour earlier than usual, the game will be broadcast. The famed Lebanon, PA high school band will entertain the 35,000 or so fans before the game and between the halves. About 30,000 tickets for the game will go on sale Sunday at 9 a.m. at the Franklin Field ticket booths. Nestling all by themselves in second place, the Birds must win this afternoon to stay that way. A victory for Cleveland will tie the Browns for second and force a division of second-place money. Ooh. That stinks. The Eagles have a log of 7-4, their best since 1954, and a win today will give them the top club record since the 1949 outfit lost only once in 12 games en route to its second straight world championship. Cleveland, beaten last week by New York, which clinched the Eastern Conference title, is in third place with a record of 6-5. The Philly Pros lost both games to the Browns in 58 and dropped a 28-7 verdict in Cleveland 5 weeks ago. The Birds rebounding 34-14 win over the Skins in Washington last week, highlighted by 3 touchdowns by Tommy McDonald on Norm Van Brocklin passes, has given the team renewed vigor and hope of halting the great Brown, Bobby Mitchell, and the remainder of the Clevelanders. Then, too, the game will be the swan song for Chuck Bednarik. No, it won't be. Veteran center and linebacker for 11 seasons, Bednarik, 33, has announced his retirement to go into business. Yeah, that's not happening. Well, he's going to be going into business, but he'll be playing more football. Boston Billy Barnes, tough little halfback, will enter the game totaling 637 yards and 11 contests, his best single season since he joined the Eagles 3 years ago. 1958, he ground out 551 yards, tops for him until this season. McDonald, electrifying pass catcher, also is in the banner season with 43 catches for 776 yards and 10 touchdowns. I mean, he's averaging like 18 or so, whatever it is, yards or reception. He's a home run hitter. As compared to his 1958 when he snagged 29 for 603 and 9 scores. Against the Skins, Van Brocklin had one of his better days, hitting on 18 out of 30 throws for 265 yards and 3 touchdowns. He, too, is enjoying his top year as an Eagle. A year ago, he threw a total of 374, connecting on 198 for 2,409 yards and 15 scores. To date, he has hit the mark on 176 times on 318 attempts for 2,361 yards and 15 touchdowns. A passing percentage of .553 against .529 in 1958. The Browns will be on the rebound at Franklin Field, seeking to snap a 3-game losing streak and at the same time ensure themselves a share of second-place money. The Browns were hurting even before they started the game in New York last Sunday, but expect to be in better shape for the finale here. And then, of course, we got other final regular scheduled league games for the rest for the season. Giants are playing Redskins. Packers are in San Francisco. The Lions are playing in Chicago against the Bears. Cleveland's playing, obviously, the Eagles. And the Cardinals are playing Pittsburgh. And, of course, Baltimore the day before, Baltimore had beaten the Rams. So that's where your 6 games are at. So they played the Colts and the Rams played on Saturday. But these 5 games are on Sunday. Now, as I said, it's just a 12-team league. There's only 6 games played every week compared to the 16 games, unless there's a bye week, right? But, so it's a lot of, there's been quite a bit of expansion over the years here. Only played 6 games a week. That's all it was. Crazy, huh? All right, so what happened during the game? Well, let's go to the Philadelphia Inquirer. December 14th, 1959 edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer. We'll find out what happened in the game. What? How did the Browns win? All right, here we go. December 14th, 1959, the Philadelphia Inquirer. And we got some, here we go. Let me refresh it before it screws up on me here. All right, so you got Hall of Famer here, Chuck Bednarik. Hall of Famer right here, Chuck Noll. Cleveland Jimmy Brown ground out the most yards at Franklin Field, but the finest run of the game was the one by Billy Barnes. Chuck Bednarik helps open up a hole. Brown's Chuck Knoll stands in the way. Knoll has Barnes' shirt at the belt line as Ken Cones angles over, promising additional trouble as Barnes sprints through the secondary. Barnes' power has shaken him loose of Knoll, but Cones still looms big, and Jim Schaffner is moving in as Barnes weaves and hula hips over the 5-yard line. Schaffner is at the goal line and is closing in very fast. Final burst of power sends Barnes plunging into the end zone. Cones and Schaffner have been run over, tumbled. Barnes ran 28 yards on the first play of the second quarter to give the Eagles a 7-7 tie, but they wound up taking a 20-21 defeat from Browns in their finale. There you go. All right, who we got here? Eagles halfback Walt Kowalczyk is snowed under by Cleveland tacklers in the first quarter of the Sunday's game at Franklin Field. Galen Fiss made an initial tackle on Chuck Knoll, right, the future Pittsburgh Steelers Hall of Fame coach, number 65, and Jim Schaffner climbed on pile just to make sure. Browns won the fourth quarter comeback 28-21. All right, here we go. Rugged Jimmy Brown, a human bulldozer and a powerful Cleveland defensive line, kept the Eagles from enjoying a perfect home season as the football season ended on a discordant note at Franklin Field Sunday afternoon. Brown, who ran wild through most of the alternately cloudy and sunny after alternately. I guess I thought it would be alternating, but alternately. Cloudy and sunny afternoon. Scored 2 last period touchdowns on short plunges to give the Browns a 28-21 victory and a share of second place with the losers in the NFL's Eastern Division, much to the disappointment of 45,952 onlookers. It was the second largest turnout of the year and helped set an all-time Eagles home attendance record of 224,518. It surpassed the 208,515 that saw the green and white play in 1950. So the Eagles, who came from behind to score 3 times in the second period for a 21-14 halftime lead, muffed their chance to finish in undisputed possession of second place when they failed to score on 6 shots at the Cleveland line from inside the 4-yard line late in the third quarter. Because remember, if they tied, they were in second place all by themselves. In one of the great stands in Cleveland's storied history, the Browns held 4 times inside the 1 to earn the ball on downs, and their success so inspired them that they drove 99 yards for a deadlocking TD and then came back with a 44-yard scoring march to sew up the decision that snapped the 3-game losing streak. In becoming the only team to take this season's series from green and white, the Browns tore apart the Eagles' defensive line with some of the sharpest blocking seen here all year. And this enabled the 228-pound Brown and the fleet Bobby Mitchell to reel off consistent gains as the visitors compiled the top-heavy edge, 296 net yards to 60 on the ground. So the Browns had almost 300 yards rushing. Brown, the league's leading ground gainer for the third straight season, accounted for 152 yards on 33 carries, his longest gain being a 22-yard sprint on the next to last play, the rather dull contest. Mitchell, who scored the second Cleveland touchdown on a 5-yard burst through his own right guard in the second period, contributed 127 yards on 24 carries, including the game's longest run of 29 yards. Brown's sparkling performance offset one of his rare fumbles. Tackle Don Owens recovered for the Eagles' second TD that tied the score at 14-14. The bobble came after Norm Van Brocklin had punted out on the Cleveland 11-yard line. Owens dove for the loose ball on the 5, finally got complete possession on the 2, and then rolled into the end zone for the score. Billy Barnes counted the Eagles' first touchdown on a beautiful 28-yard zigzag run through most of the Cleveland team to cap an 83-yard march on the first play of the second period. Bobby Walston gave the Eagles their halftime edge by snaring an 18-yard pass from Van Brocklin with 32 seconds left in the half. It was Van Brocklin's third completion of a 4-play drive that covered 59 yards. The Dutchman put on quite a passing show, and for a time it looked as if his overhead strikes would enable the Eagles to overcome Cleveland's superiority on the ground. Van Brocklin completed 15 of 22 tries for 246 yards. He had a string of 11 consecutive completions at one stage of 11 straight completions, one stage of the second half before Bernie Parrish made the game's lone interception in the closing minutes to doom the flock to their first loss in 6 home games. Because of their success on the ground, the Browns used the air line sparingly, but when they did, they were quite effective. Bill Plum, former Penn State star from Woodbury, New Jersey, completed 12 of 14 tosses for 163 yards. Yeah, they're running the ball so good, it really opens up. And Bill Plum's 12 out of 14. I mean, that's a high percentage completion percentage right there, right? His most important aerial came in the first quarter when he teamed up with Preston Carpenter on a 43-yard play for the game's first TD. Carpenter took a strike. Okay, so we'll go to the next page here of the Philadelphia Inquirer. The December 14th, 1959 edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer. All right, there we go. All right. Oh, let me refresh this. I do apologize before it screws up on me here. Okay. All right, so the last part of the article said, Carpenter took a strike just a half yard in front of Art Powell on the Eagle 22 and raced down the north sidelines for the tally. Cleveland's score came shortly after a tremendous Eagle stand had turned back an initial Brown drive of 53 yards on the 3, with the help of Chuck Bednarik, who concluded 11 distinguished seasons with his usual sparkling performance. The Eagles matched the Brown TD with Barnes' thrilling run after a Van Brocklin pass of 27 yards that Pete Retzlaff put the ball in position. The Browns, in turn, struck back with an 80-yard drive that was capped by Mitchell's tally on the 16th play. That's a good drive right there, boy. Ooh. The Browns ran 8 consecutive running plays at one stretch of this advance. Hey, keep running it until they stop you. After the Eagles went ahead for the first time on Walston's TD, the Browns still found time for an unsuccessful field goal attempt by Lou Groza from the 40. Groza, whose blocking was a highlight on the Brown offensive line, also missed a field goal shot from the 38 at the start of the second half. Immediately thereafter, the Eagles drove from their own 20 to within inches of a TD before losing the ball on the 1. Van Brocklin completed passes of 18, 16, 22, and 14 yards before firing a 5th to Walston for 12 more and a first on the 4. Thus, it was rather surprising that he didn't try at least one more pass. Barnes, who accounted for 50 yards on 13 carries, could gain but 2 yards on 2 slashes off right tackle. Then a holding penalty gave the Eagles a first down on the 1, and it didn't seem likely that they could miss. Van Brocklin got nowhere on a sneak, but Barnes picked up a half yard on a plunge at the middle. Walt Kowalczyk was tossed back to the 1 on the next play. Clarence Peaks, who saw limited action because of a bad ankle, was rushed in for a final try, but he was stopped at the line of scrimmage, and that was the ball game as far as the Birds were concerned. The Browns then drove 99 relentless yards on 13 time-consuming plays, with Brown carrying 6 straight times to account for the final 15 yards as he dove over the middle from the 1 for the TD. When the Browns got the ball back several minutes later on the Eagles' 44, result of a wind-stop Van Brocklin punt, they swept relentlessly to their winning touchdown as Brown, and there is the Eagles scored 21 points. The Eagles scored all their points in the second quarter. We got here. First downs. Each team had 30 first downs. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know what the heck that is, but each team had 30 first. Nah, that's sorry. But you can see, I mean, the Browns had 300 yards rushing, almost 150 passing, Whew. But you see right here, I mean, like Brown ran the ball 33 times, Mitchell 24 times. They ran the ball 59 times. Wow. Almost 60 times they ran the ball. The Eagles ran the ball 25 times for 60 yards. Wow. All right. What do we got here? What's that? Winning Brown is a touchdown as Brown carried on 6 of the 10 plays and smashed over from the 4. Thus, the Eagles closed out with a 7-5 record, the best since tying for second place at 7-4-1 in 1953, and far better than anyone believed possible at the start of the season. Yeah, it's a fantastic season for the Eagles. It really is. All right, we got another one here. What do we got? The Cleveland Press, December 14th, 1959 edition of the Cleveland Press. What do they got to say? All right, let me refresh it first so it doesn't screw up on me here. Eagles fear Van Brocklin will decide to retire. Nope, that's not happening either. The Eagles are reported to be greatly concerned that Norm Van Brocklin will give up pro football for coaching next season. He held a green team together this year. 6 Browns have been named to the Eastern Division squad for the Pro Bowl game in Los Angeles, January 17th. Jimmy Ray Smith, Lou Groza, Jim Brown, Art Hunter from the offensive unit, and defensemen Walt Michaels and Bob Gain received the invitations in Philadelphia yesterday. Paul Brown was elated over Floyd Peters' work at the defensive right tackle. He's beginning to find out what he can do out there, said Brown. Peters, who stopped Van Brocklin's quarterback sneak during the goal line stand, said he told the veteran, "You're an old man and all through in this year." Van Brocklin's reply as they unpiled was, "You're just a rookie and punchy already." Sporting News announced its 22-man Eastern Division All-Star team, and the list included Mike McCormick. And there we go, right here. There's a loose ball there, but sure recovery for the Browns. It looked that way, but the pigskin proved elusive as halfback Jim Schaffner and linebacker Chuck Noll grabbed for it. The Eagles finally recovered it. Halfback Billy Barnes. The Eagles had fumbled early in the first quarter. Bob Gaines, 79, and Ken Cones of the Browns and Chuck Bednarik, 60 of the Eagles, are ready to join the scramble. Let's see. Gaines, Smith, Browns, and Michaels. The Giants play 7. I was a high jumper early on in college, said Bernie Parrish upon receiving congratulations for his important leaping interception late in the game. He had to give it up, though, after I gained 40 pounds in 1 year. Jim Brown held a towel wrapped around an ice bag over a cut and swelling high on his left cheekbone during the bus and plane rides after the game. I got it when I ran into Art Powell in the 4th quarter, said Brown. I think my helmet came down over my eye. Jim believes that the handoff hit his fingertips when he fumbled for an Eagles touchdown. Bill Plum was purchased a home in Westlake. He said yesterday's strong wind bothered him in warm-ups, but didn't affect his passing during the game. I guess not. He was 12 out of 14. Of course, we didn't throw much against the wind, he added. Van Brocklin said the wind blew the ball high up on his leg when he punted only 20 yards before the Browns' winning touchdown. Jim Schaffner also had a 20-yarder against the gale. No one announced his retirement, although Warren Lair and Ed Modzelewski are possibles. Groza and Billy Houghton intend to retire. Eagles finished with their best season attendance in history, joining 24,518. Giants' Dick Modzelewski, Ed's brother, is moving to Cleveland. Philadelphia made only 4 yards rushing in the last half. Wow. Whew. Michaels asked to play the second half despite his broken left hand and finished the game. Galen Fisk was right linebacker with Chuck Noll on the left side in the first half. Ken Cones went the route at right safety in place of Junior Rim. Groundskeeper at Franklin Field tried a new fertilizer earlier this year and burned all the grass off the gridiron. And here's the play of the day. Is there anything up here? Nope. Okay. Play of the day. How good is your memory? The 43-yard touchdown yesterday on a pass from Multnomah to Preston Carpenter once before had been a big play for the Browns. On the same pattern, Dante Lavelli caught a touchdown pass from Otto Graham just before the first half ended in the championship game in 1955, and it proved the crusher in a 38-14 victory over the Rams. Yesterday, the Eagles were double-teaming on Ray Renfro. He took the right halfback and safety to the middle and cleared the area for Carpenter, who took the pass on the 20 and raced across. The Eagles' right and left linebackers blitzed, but were stopped on good blocks by Jim Brown and Bobby Mitchell. So one of the things when you red dog or blitz and you don't get home, right? So you got where we at? Here we go. Right. So he comes blitzing in. Mitchell comes over here, makes a block, and right side linebacker comes in. He's red dogging. Brown comes over. He makes a block. Gives Plum good protection. All right, so we got Houghton here. He's right. He's going deep here. Renfro's dragging across the middle here and going over here. So these guys are occupied over here. One guy's got to be taking him, and other guys may be taking Houghton deep. Right. So, but yeah. Carpenter drags across, right? Catches the pass right here. He's off and running. All right, here we go. Here. Goal line stand sparks Browns' upbeat ending. It was the next best thing to winning a championship. The Browns players and coaches were unanimous in their opinion following yesterday's fourth quarter bounce-back victory over the Eagles, 28-21. It took pretty sturdy character to play like that with a tie for second place, the only thing at stake, observed Paul Brown. There were any number of times they could have quit and simply run out the clock, but they refused to dog it. Also agreed upon was the fact that a remarkable goal line stand by the Browns' much maligned defensive line was the turning point late in the third quarter. The Eagles, after sailing 58 yards on Norm Van Brocklin passes for first down on the Browns' 4, had 7 shots at cracking the goal line and couldn't make it. They were the defensive unit's finest moments of the season that went from bright promise to near despair in recent weeks and finally finished with a measure of satisfaction. You wouldn't think it was possible to have that many chances that close and not score, said Coach Buck Shaw of the Eagles with a slow shake of his snow-white head. From the 4, halfback Billy Barnes bucked first to the right and then to the left. He gained only a yard each time against Willie McClung, Floyd Peters, Bob Gain, Paul Wiggin, Vince Costello, Walt Michaels, and Galen Fiss. Van Brocklin passed incomplete into the end zone, but defensive holding was called on Warren Lair, and Philadelphia had a first down on the 1. Then Van Brocklin tried to sneak, and Barnes rammed the Browns' right side, and neither gained more than a few inches. Walt Kowalczyk again tried the Browns' right side and was thrown for a yard loss, and the threat died as Clarence Peaks, who replaced Kowalczyk at fullback, hit the left side and made only a yard. The Eagles, instead of having a 28-14 lead, then found the score tied as the Browns ripped 99 yards. Whoops, whoa. Bobby Mitchell, who had his busiest day with 24 carries for 127 yards. Yeah, I think the last time he played, I think he only had like 6 carries the last time he played the Eagles. He got the drive started by taking a pitch out in the end zone and racing 29 yards down the left side. Jim Brown ran 6 straight times for the final 15 yards. Next time Cleveland got the ball, Brown scored again with 3:12 left to cap a 44-yard march after a wind-blown Van Brocklin punt carried only 20 yards. The Eagles still had time to tie it up and clinch second place, but Bernie Parrish intercepted a Van Brocklin pass on the Browns' 36. Recent injuries suffered by Ray Renfro, Jimmy Ray Smith, Mike McCormick, and Lou Groza had healed just enough to permit the Browns to unload their best offense of the season at 450 yards. Brown up the middle, Mitchell wide, and key passes by Mill Plum, who completed 12 of 14 for 163 yards, were too much for the Eagles to cope with. Brown ran 33 times for 152 yards. Philadelphia still came mighty close to 21 points in the second quarter, and Van Brocklin as its only real offensive threat. Van Brocklin's passes set up a fancy 28-yard off-tackle run by Barnes for the Eagles' first score. And he tossed 18 yards to Bobby Walston for a 21-14 halftime lead. That TD came only 2 minutes after tackle Don Owens recovered a fumble by Jim Brown on the Cleveland 3 and rolled into the end zone. The Eagles' outburst wiped out a 43-yard Plum to Preston Carpenter scoring pass and a 5-yard scoring run by Mitchell, but it wasn't enough. All right, now we got, let's see what we got here. Yeah, we got some more here. We share a screen. Dun, 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 dun. Where are we at here? Oh, there we go. All right. Now this would be the Philadelphia Bulletin. And here's Chuck Bednarik running out. The Eagles' Chuck Bednarik, who retired after yesterday's game again. He's coming out of retirement. And it's Franklin Field between columns of Lebanon High School band running out between the goalposts here too. It's right here. All right. Oops. Eagles miss TD in 6 tries from the 4. Bowder Browns share second place. No touchdown for the Eagles, just a pushback. Goal line stand by Cleveland stops the Eagles just inches from the score in the third quarter. Here, Eagles Bill Barnes on top of the pack runs into a restraining hand of Cleveland's Kenneth Combs at Franklin Field yesterday. Right here. Right into the heart of the defense. Right, let's see here. The Eagles said their farewells and wished each other a Merry Christmas while the muted band played Chopin's funeral march in the wings. We blew it, just blew it, said Senator Chuck Bednarik, who had hoped to retire on a happier note. There isn't any need to alibi when you can't cover 4 yards for a touchdown in 6 tries. None of Bednarik's playmates was in a mood to find excuses for a 28-21 defeat inflicted on them by the Cleveland Browns before 45,952 disappointed onlookers. A defeat that cost the Eagles the undisputed hold of second place in the NFL's Eastern Division and some $300 in playoff prize money. It was the first time in 6 home games that the Eagles had tasted the bitter gall, and the second time the Browns had humbled them this season. Both teams finished a 12-game campaign with a 7-5 record, the best for the Eagles had compiled since 1954. The Browns threw the hardest blocking at us we had felt all season, said All-Pro defensive halfback Tom Brookshire, who was subjected to a bruising afternoon by blockers clearing the way for those 2 splendid Cleveland runners, Jimmy Brown and Bobby Mitchell. In Brookshire's behalf, it should be noted that neither he nor the 4 members of the forward defensive line got much help from the linebacking group. Elaborating on this failure, Coach Buck Shaw remarked, they 5-yarded us to death. The linebacking was poor, and it made the big fellas up front look bad. With runners like Brown and Mitchell, they just have to have help. As for our tertiary defense, there are only a couple of fellows back there who are willing to tackle in the open. Between them, Brown and Mitchell mince-meated the Eagle defense inside and out for 279 yards on 57 carries. Wow. But even with their startling superiority on the ground, the Browns probably would not have won had the Eagles been able to score from 4 yards out in the third period. After Lou Groza missed a field goal from the 38, the Eagles took over on their own 20. And with Norm Van Brocklin passing superbly to Billy Barnes, Pete Retzlaff, Tommy McDonald and Bobby Walston moved down to the 4. Barnes got 2 yards and 2 tries. Then a holding penalty on the Browns gave the Eagles an automatic first down on the 1. Van Brockton tried to do a quarterback sneak and got nothing. Kowalczyk got 6 inches, then lost 2 yards. On 4th down, Grant Slam, Clarence Peaks was held at the line of scrimmage. I was considering passing on 4th down, Van Brockton said afterwards, but I figured an interception or a catch in the end zone would put them on the 20. I thought one of our lads could get that 1 yard, but even if they didn't, we would still have them hold up on the 1. But that didn't work out because then after that, the Browns drove the length of the field to score a touchdown. The Eagles couldn't even do that. On the first play, Mitchell skirted left end for 29 yards, and from there, Brown and Mitchell, aided by a 15-yard holding penalty against the Eagles, slashed and bowled for the 21-21 equalizer. This score came at 4:38 of the 4th period, and 7 minutes later, the Browns had the clincher. Van Brockton had to punt into a strong wind, and a short boot gave the Browns the ball on the 45. During this short scoring drive, Milt Plum threw only once, a 10-yard third down and outer to Billy Houghton. That put the ball on the 29. Brown, then Mitchell, and Cleveland had the ball on the 4, from where Brown churned over. If he hadn't been for the running of Barnes, the throwing of Van Brockton, who completed 15 out of 22 for 246 yards, and the catching of McDonald, who had 4 receptions for 60, and Pete Retzlaff, who had 4 receptions for 81 yards, and Bobby Walston, who had 3 receptions for 44, the Eagles wouldn't have been in the game at all. Barnes, who had 50 yards for 30 carries, plus 3 catches for 48 yards, had no help from the rest of the Eagles runners. Peaks, suffering from a bad ankle, saw only intermittent action and wound up with minus 2 yards and 5 carries. His replacement, Kowalczyk, had only 12 yards and 6 lunges. The Eagles also suffered defensively when Art Powell had to be removed because of a leg injury. All the way through the, what we got here? Bobby Walston of the Eagles clutches the ball firmly to chest and shakes off tackle applied by Brown's Barney Parrish after scoring an aerial from Norm Van Brockton in the second period. All the way through the Browns were healthy. Their injured key men having recovered after the 48-7 pasting in New York a week ago. Browns won the toss and elected to kick with the strong wind behind them. The strategy punt by Van Brockton gave them the ball on the 44. From there, Plum afforded strong passing protection, drove the Browns to the 3, where Brown was thrown back on 4th down with a yard to go for a first down. The Eagles, however, couldn't move against the wind, and another short punt gave the foe the ball on the local 43. On the first play, Plum sorted out his receivers with Liberation, then fired to Preston Carpenter, who romped over from the 25. Rover kicked the first of 4 conversions. The Eagles evened it up at 7-7 at the start of the second period. Retzlaff made a magnificent diving catch on the 28, and from there, Barnes twisted and leaped away from the clutches of the entire Cleveland Brown team to score standing up. Walston added the first of 3 points. The Browns retaliated with an 80-yarder that saw Mitchell going over from the 5. But at 12:29 of the second period, the Eagles evened it again when defensive tackle Don Owens grabbed a Jim Brown fumble on the 3 and rolled over the goal line. Now the Browns had the wind against them. A 20-yard punt by Jim Schaffner gave the Eagles possession on their 41. Van Brockton speared McDonald for 23 yards, then threw an across-the-field pass to Barnes that put the ball on the 18. Walston, all alone in the corner, caught the scoring throw with 14:28 gone in the half. Even after the Browns surged backward for 14 points in the second half, the Eagles threatened to tie it up. Passes to Barnes and Retzlaff moved the ball from the 20 to the 45, but rookie Barney Parrish took the steam out of the whooping crowd by intercepting Van Brockton's throw on his 40 with 2 minutes left. Here we go. Yeah, a first down. Okay, now. Yeah, I can see this. Maybe 30 for the Browns because 300 yards rushing. All right, so the Browns had 30 first downs. The Eagles only had 16. So not exactly a banner day. But as we know, the Browns are basically really fantastic team. Absolutely fantastic team. Right, so we got here, right, and there's nothing on this page here except for this picture here. This unfortunately Pete Retzlaff, right here, standing in the end zone, reaches for an aerial which was batted down by Cleveland Browns' Jim Schaffner, who threw himself in front of the intended receiver in the third quarter of yesterday's game. So they're on the other. So you see the buildings in the background here. Right, so they're all on the other side. Right. So I mean, Eagles had their chance, just couldn't capitalize. Now they all right. So, but as I said, they wind up. They had themselves a fantastic season, but getting down to the 4-yard line, and they ran 7 plays. One of them wound up being a penalty, holding, which moved it down to the 1. And from the 1, they had 4 tries, and they couldn't get it in 4 tries from the 1. So apparently they didn't try to go wide because sometimes that's the way to go. But sometimes you start going wide, guy crashes through or whatever, and you wind up losing yardage. So. But the odd thing was that with all those 4 tries, Van Brocklin didn't try one pass. But then again, a lot of coaches wind up saying, if you can't gain a yard, you don't deserve the touchdown, right? And the Browns, not much to play for. Rose to the occasion, had a fantastic goal line stand, and wound up keeping the Eagles out of the end zone. But I mean, that's one of those things is that, a lot of times when you have almost nothing but pride to play for, sometimes it gets a little bit difficult to get up and to rise to the occasion. But the Browns did. They took advantage of the opportunities they had, and the Eagles had a couple of chances. They could have scored that one touchdown there. Things might have been a little bit different, but it is what it is. So both these teams wound up in second place, 7-5 records. As I said before, for the Eagles, they had absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. It was an absolutely fantastic season for the Philadelphia Eagles because they had 2 wins in 1958. They went to 7 wins in 1959. And, of course, in 1960, they would take it to 10 wins where they would win the championship. So, but for the Browns, 7-5, it's not a particularly good season for them, even though they were in second place. They're 3 games out of first place. Better times would be ahead for the Browns, not for the next few seasons, though, because in 1960, the Eagles would win the division. 61, 62, and 63, the Giants would win the division. So it would take a little while for the Browns to be, I guess, relevant once again, meaning winning the division. But by that time, once the Browns started winning the division once again, Paul Brown was out as head coach. So it is what it is. But so that's the way it was on this day. The final game for these 2 seasons of the 1959 season, as the Cleveland Browns visited Franklin Field to take on the Philadelphia Eagles on December 13th, 1959. Pro football, first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.